The first thing Kale Morrow did every morning was try to make a fist. Not for any particular reason. Not to warm up, not to test himself against anything. It was just the ritual, the same way some men reach for coffee or a cigarette before their eyes are fully open. He'd lie on whatever surface he'd found, a bedroll on a poor resin floor, the folded jacket he used for a pillow, the slant of a wall where two prefab panels had buckled apart and left a gap wide enough for a man to sleep in. And he'd curl his fingers in, one by one, until the knuckles screamed at him. Some mornings they didn't, those were the good ones. This morning they did. He uncurled his hand, spread the fingers flat against the cold metal above his head, and looked at them in the half-dark. The joints were swollen again. The second and third knuckles on the right hand had the look of old wood that had been rained on too many times, gnarled, faintly purple, larger than they should be. His trainer, back when he'd had one, had called it the fighter's inheritance. You spend enough years hitting things, the things start hitting you back from the inside. Somewhere behind him, Sten was already talking. The settlement hall at Darev's Crossing has a south panel that's been blown loose since the Gauss incursion. Maintenance crew doesn't come out that way till the next rotation. There's a gap at the bottom, maybe 50 centimeters. You'd have to crawl, but... I can crawl, Kale said. I know you can crawl. Then stop describing the gap to me. He sat up. The room was what they'd been sleeping in for 3 weeks, a service corridor in one of the decommissioned ore processing wings of Havel Station, on the moon's outer rim. The station proper had been sealed when the Orc clans pushed the extraction rights dispute into the contested territory courts, and the whole rim had gone quiet. The humans who'd worked here had pulled out. The clans hadn't moved in yet. In the middle, in the gap that law and economics create when they argue with each other, men like Sten and Kale found places to sleep. They crawled out through the south panel just as the artificial dawn cycled on. An orange line of atmospheric simulation lights along the settlement's horizon strip. The glow was the color of old rust. Kale stood and rolled his shoulders and watched it. We're good tonight, Sten said. He was a bigger man than Kale, broader through the chest, with a face that had been rearranged a few times and had settled into something that looked permanently skeptical. He was 3 years older and had never thrown a punch at anyone who hadn't started it. That was the split between them. Sten managed. Kale fought. Gauss came through last night. Said the circuit's running a harvest card in the Orc sector at end of week. Big crowd. Prize pool that doesn't insult you. What's the catch? There's always a catch with Gauss. That's what I said. What is it? Sten looked at the rust-colored horizon. We take someone to Durek. Kale stopped rolling his shoulder. You're not going to like it, Sten said, but Gauss has a girl. Orc girl young, she's been staying in the outer settlements. Durek wants her back. Clan lord, you know how it goes, she's some kind of property dispute, a bride price thing. I didn't ask the details. We drive her out to Durek's compound before the fight wins us the prize money, and Gauss cancels what I owe him. Clean. What you owe him? What we owe him. How much? Sten told him. Kale looked at his hands. Okay, he said, let's go meet the girl. She was sitting in the back of a freighter bay when they got there, not against the wall the way most people sit in freighter bays, but in the middle of the floor with her legs crossed and something in her lap. She was working her hands through it slowly, a loop of fiber around each thumb, pulling and twisting. When she looked up at them, her eyes were the color Orc eyes always were, that deep amber green that humans had spent years trying to describe and eventually given up on. Like sunlight through river water, one poet had written. Like infection, some soldier had countered. She was maybe 20, maybe less. Hard to tell with Orcs. Yuvrakith, Sten said. I know what my name is. I mean, are you the one Gauss told us about? She looked at the thing in her lap instead of answering. It was a braid, Kale realized. Not done with thread or wire, but with strips of something organic, something that smelled faintly like the Orc settlement smelled, green and deep, like undergrowth that had never seen a human sun. A harvest braid. He'd seen them before. Orc girls wore them at the solstice ceremonies, worked through with tokens and knots that meant different things depending on who'd made them and how. "What's that for?" Kale said. She looked at him. "Nothing you'd know." "Try me." She held it up for a second, the long loop of fiber catching the bay lights. "There's a harvest dance at the end of the third cycle. The clans gather. Girls wear these with the tokens of what they've made or grown or earned. It's a choosing." She set it back down. "I won't be there, but I'm still finishing it." There was something in that sentence that Kale understood without being able to explain why. The finishing of a thing you already know won't matter. He'd done that his whole life. "Okay," he said. "Get your pack." The vehicle Goss had arranged was a mid-range transport, beat up and overdue for a hull check, with a side hatch that didn't fully seal, and let in a thin cold line of pressurized air that sounded like someone quietly humming. Vrakith sat in the back. She went back to her braid almost immediately, thumbs working the fiber with the kind of patience that looked like it had been grown, not learned. Sten drove. Kale sat in the passenger seat and watched the lunar landscape scroll past. The Orc sector ran along the inner rim, where the crust was deeper and the ore concentrations were highest. Durek's compound was somewhere in that territory, a 3-hour transit through contested zones and clan checkpoints. They were supposed to get there before the harvest circuit opened. "She doesn't know," Kale said quietly. "She knows something," Sten said. "She doesn't know everything." "Kale, what is she to Durek?" "I told you, bride price." "She's not a bride. She's been living in the outer settlements for a year." "She ran. He wants her back. That's all I know. That's all I want to know." Sten's jaw was set the way it got when he'd made a decision he didn't feel clean about and had sealed it behind a wall he wasn't going to let anyone knock down. "We need this money. You need this fight. Let's not make it complicated." In the back seat, Vrakith's thumbs kept moving through the braid. She hadn't looked up, but her ears, the longer, pointed architecture of Orc ears, had tilted slightly forward. She'd heard. They stopped at a way station on the inner transit route because the hatch seal was getting worse, and Sten wanted to check the calibration on the navigation array. Kale went inside and found a place at the counter, and ordered something warm and sat with it, and let his hands lie flat on the surface. Vrakith came in a few minutes later. She didn't sit, just stood with her back against the far wall, watching the way station workers move around. Her braid was tucked into the inside of her coat. "You fight," she said. He looked up. "I saw the way you walked from the vehicle. You keep your left shoulder lower than your right, like you're protecting it." She tilted her head. "Or you're used to protecting it because someone keeps hitting it." "Bare-knuckle circuit," he said. "My brother manages." "Manages?" She seemed to test the word for what it meant in human. "Is that what you call it?" "We have different words for the same thing sometimes." She came and sat 2 stools down from him and didn't order anything. "Where are you taking me?" "My brother told you." "Your brother told me what he was told to tell me. I'm asking you." Kale put both hands flat on the counter and looked at them. He thought about what to say. He thought about what he knew, which was less than Sten knew, and what he suspected, which was more. Vrakith's amber-green eyes were on him, and she wasn't blinking. "Durek's compound," he said. "And what's at Durek's compound?" "I was told it's a clan matter, bride price." She was quiet for a long moment. The way station hummed around them. Someone dropped something metallic in the kitchen, and it rang once and went still. "I'm not going back there," she said. "Okay." "I'm serious, you should know that." "I believe you." "Then you understand there'll be a problem." "Yes," he said, "I understand that." She looked at him for another long moment, then got up and went back outside. Through the way station window, He watched her stand by the vehicle with her arms crossed, looking at the lunar horizon, the braid out again and working between her hands like something she couldn't stop doing even when everything was wrong. He sat for a while longer. He thought about the $100,000 prize pool. He thought about Sten's debt. He thought about the dry cleaning operation they'd been planning for 6 years now, which existed entirely in the form of a handwritten ledger Sten kept in his jacket pocket, full of numbers that didn't yet add up to anything real but were treated with the reverence of scripture. A legitimate business. Pressed uniforms, clean garments, ordinary hours. The kind of life that didn't require a man to check what his knuckles could do every morning before he was willing to believe he was still whole. He thought about Vraketh's hands in the braid. He paid for the drink and went outside. Sten found out about Vraketh's past 3 days into the transit, during a stop at a clan waypoint where one of Durek's subordinates came out to check on the delivery schedule. The subordinate was a young orc, barely adult, with the clan markings still raw on his arms, and he had the careful blankness of expression that meant he'd been coached on what not to say. He looked at Vraketh in the back of the vehicle and smiled in a way that made Kale's left hand curl. After he left, Sten sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. "Goss told me it was a bride price situation," he said. "I know what you thought it was," Kale said. Sten stopped, his jaw worked. "She's not going there as a bride." "No. Durek's operation is." "I know what it is, Sten." Vraketh had her eyes closed in the back seat. She might have been asleep. She wasn't asleep. "We're in this," Sten said. He said it quietly, not because he wanted to keep it from her, but because he wanted to keep it from himself. "We finish the delivery, we get to the fight, we take the prize money, and we leave. That's the only version of this that ends without us dead in a clan dispute on a contested moon with no legal standing." "That's one version," Kale said. "It's the only version." "Okay, Sten." He drove. Kale watched the landscape and didn't say anything else. In the back seat, Vraketh opened her eyes and went back to her braid. They found a human settlement that was closed for the cycle, a small agricultural outpost whose workers had rotated out for the seasonal downtime, the buildings unlocked, the heating system still running on automated low. The kind of place that didn't advertise its emptiness, but didn't bother hiding it either. Sten got them inside. He found ration packs in the supply closet and heated them on the outpost's small unit while Kale sat at the settlement's long common table and Vraketh walked slowly through the rooms, not touching anything, looking at everything. The walls had the accumulated evidence of human habitation. Notes stuck up with tape, a calendar several cycles old, a child's drawing of a person with an enormous head and stick limbs, taped at the corner of a window. She stood in front of the drawing for a long time. "What is it?" Kale asked. "I've seen children," she said. "Orc children, they make marks on stone on walls. The marks mean something specific: clan sign, territory, kin group notation. Every mark has a function." She looked at the drawing. "This one is just a person with no clan marks, no function, it's just," she turned the word over, "joyful." "Kids draw what they feel," Kale said. "Orc children are not permitted to draw what they feel. They're taught the marks that matter." He thought about that. "That sounds bleak." "It sounds like order," she said. "Then, it does sound bleak." Sten brought the ration packs over. They ate at the long table, 3 figures in the yellow light of the automated heating system, and outside the pressurized dome the lunar surface was dark and still, and the stars were the kind of clear that only exists where there's no atmosphere to soften them. "We've been talking about going legitimate," Sten said, eventually. He always said it like that, "We've been talking about it," as though the ledger in his jacket pocket was a conversation rather than his own obsession. "There's a market for it in the outer settlements. Pressurized garments need specialized cleaning. The chemical tolerances are different from standard textiles, and most of the big outfits on the station don't want the liability. But a small operation, locally based." He's been planning this for 6 years, Kale said to Vracath. 7, Sten said. 7 years. We have the numbers. If the prize money lands right, Sten stopped himself. He looked at the table. If things go the way they're supposed to go. Vracath was looking at Sten with an expression Kale had come to recognize over the last few days. It was the expression she made when she was calculating something. Not hostile, not even cool, just precise. The way an orc scout looks at a landscape she's memorizing for later. You make him fight so you can stop fighting, she said. That's not, Sten began. You never had his talent, you know that. So you tend it and you spend it and you tell yourself it's for both of you. She said it without heat. I'm not criticizing, I'm observing. You humans do this. You make family into a dead arrangement and call it love. Orcs aren't exactly famous for. No, she said, we're worse, we're honest about it. She went back to the braid. At least you love him. The table was quiet. The heating unit ticked. Somewhere outside, something contracted in the cold. I do, Sten said. He sounded surprised to have said it out loud. Kale got up and took the ration pack wrappers to the waste unit. He stood with his back to the table for a moment and worked his right hand slowly open and shut, listening to the click of the joints. You should sleep, Vracath said behind him. You fight in 2 days. I know. Can you still make a proper fist? He turned, she was watching him. Most mornings, he said. She nodded, not with sympathy exactly, but with the particular acknowledgement of someone who understood what it was to do something difficult with a body that had been used hard. She went back to her braid. He slept. In the morning the braid was longer, and there were 3 tokens worked into it that hadn't been there the night before. Small pieces of shaped resin. He didn't know where she'd gotten the materials. She must have had them in her pack. The color of the thing she'd made was the deep blue-green of the orc harvest ceremony. He looked at it while she worked and she let him look. What do the tokens mean? He said. This one, she touched a flat disc near the center, is for something you made with your hands, work. This one, a smaller piece, vaguely triangular, is for something you gave up, sacrifice but voluntary, not taken. She paused at the third, the one closest to the end, still partly unfinished. This one doesn't have a name in standard. Closest I can manage is staying, when you could leave, when leaving would be the sensible thing. He looked at it, perseverance. Not exactly. Perseverance is about difficulty. This is about, she thought, a door that's open. You walk past it, not because you're too afraid to go through, but because there's something on this side of it that you aren't finished with yet. He thought about the fight he was supposed to lose 6 months ago, before he'd understood the full terms of Sten's arrangement with Goss. The way he'd seen Sten's face in the crowd and understood what the bet meant, and had felt the rage settle in his chest like cold water, and had thrown the fight anyway. Had gone down and stayed down not out of obedience, but because going down was the only way he could think of to punish Sten without also destroying him. The door that's open, walking past it. Yeah, he said, okay. The trouble came on the second to last day before the harvest circuit, the way trouble usually comes, sideways, in the form of a small thing that grows. They'd stopped at a transit junction to check on fuel cell status, and Sten had gone inside to talk to the junction operator about the routing into the inner sector. Kale and Vracath waited outside. A clan transport pulled in alongside them, and one of the riders got out and looked at Vracath with the flat, informational look of a man who has been shown a photograph and is confirming a match. He spoke to her in Orc, short, clipped clan dialect, the kind used for transactions. Vracath answered him in the same dialect, also short. Her voice was level. Her hands had stopped moving on the braid. The rider went back inside. He recognized you, Kale said. Yes. He'll tell someone. He already has. His comm unit was active when he was looking at me. She put the braid away. Durek will know our route by tonight. He'll be ahead of us, not behind. Kale thought, then we don't take the route. There are only two viable routes in. Durek knows both. Then we don't deliver you. She was quiet. Vrakith, if you don't deliver me, Goss kills your brother. That's how this kind of arrangement works. Sten can handle himself. Not against Goss's crew he can't. They have 3 enforcers on retainer. She said it with the calm of someone who has spent time around the mechanics of threat. I've been in this world for 2 years. I know how it works. You give me up, you get the fight, you get the money, you get the business you've been planning for 7 years, and your brother lives. If you don't, I know the if not. Then you know the answer. He looked at the transit junction. Inside, through the scratched plexi, he could see Sten talking to the operator with the gestures he used when he was confident about something he wasn't actually sure of. The ledger was probably in his jacket pocket right now. 7 years of numbers. You said you weren't going back, Kale said. I'm not. I'm telling you the math. Tell me the math again. I'm not going back. There it is. He leaned against the vehicle. The moon's pale surface extended in every direction. The human settlement strip a bright arc in the far distance. The Orc sector's dark mass in the near distance. Between them, the contested zone, which was exactly what it sounded like. Can you drive? He said. She looked at him. If I needed you to drive this vehicle, could you do it? Orc Learner's program starts at 8. I've been driving since I was 9. Good, he straightened up. If things go wrong at Durek's compound, you drive. You don't wait for me, you don't wait for Sten. You take the vehicle, and you go for the outer settlements, and you don't stop. If things go wrong at Durek's compound, she said carefully, there is no version where you come out of it. I've been in worse rooms. You haven't. No, he admitted, probably not. He paused. But I've gotten up from worse knockdowns and the principle's the same. Sten came back out, saw their faces and stopped. What? He said. Kale told him. The thing about Sten was that when everything went wrong, his default was math. He stood there running numbers in his head. Kale could see it happen, the jaw going slightly slack, the eyes tracking nothing. And at the end of it, his mouth made the shape of a calculation that didn't come out clean. Goss will, he started. I know. The fight. I know, Sten. All of it's 7 years, it goes away. Yeah. Sten was quiet for a long time. He looked at Vrakith, who was watching him with the same precise attention she gave everything. He looked at Kale. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the ledger, the actual handwritten ledger, the one with the 7 years of numbers in it, and looked at it for a long moment and then put it back. Okay, he said. Okay. Don't make me say it twice. He got into the driver's seat. We'll figure out Goss. They drove into the inner sector. They found Durek's compound in a canyon rim installation. The kind of place that had been built during the first wave of Orc expansion and never properly finished, blast doors that didn't fully close, lighting systems that strobed every few minutes, a smell of condensed mineral water and something older, something like fear that had become architecture. What happened in Durek's compound, Kale would not describe later in any detail. He would say it was quick and it was not clean and it was not quiet. And when Sten came out of the interior corridors half dragging himself, and they found the vehicle and Vrakith was already in the driver's seat, he said 2 things. He said, Durek won't be a problem. And then he said, I'm sorry I brought you into this. And Vrakith, who had not been asked to wait for them and had waited anyway, who had the vehicle running and the route mapped and both hands on the controls, said nothing. But she stayed at the wheel for the full transit back out of the sector, and when they reached the outer rim, she kept driving until the lights of the human settlement strip were close, and only then did she slow down. Sten had a cracked rib and a gash on his arm that had gone through the jacket. They found a settlement medic who worked out of a converted supply unit and charged in credit rather than questions. While the medic was working, Kale went outside and sat on a packing crate and looked at the settlement. Vracath came and sat next to him. She had the braid. She was still working on the third token, the unfinished one, her fingers moving through the familiar motions. "The harvest dance," Kale said. "Is it?" "Tomorrow," she said. "The third cycle closes tomorrow." He thought about that. The settlement had a procurement terminal 2 corridors over. He'd seen it when they arrived. Outer settlements ran procurement terminals the way they ran everything, with the minimum required staff and the maximum required inventory, because you never knew what the rotation would bring in or what someone might desperately need. "Come with me," he said. She looked up. "Humor me. Come with me for 20 minutes. The procurement terminal was run by a woman of about 60 who had the look of someone who had decided not to be surprised by anything that happened on contested zone moons. She looked at Kale and at Vracath and did not visibly react to the orc standing in her terminal at this hour. "I need a dress," Kale said. The woman looked at Vracath. "What kind?" "The kind you'd wear to a harvest dance," Vracath said, and her voice was strange, careful with something inside it that hadn't been careful before. They had 3. They were not extravagant. One was blue-gray and practical and would have been appropriate in a human agricultural settlement. One was a deep green that was not quite the right green. The third was the color of deep water with embroidery along the hem. The procurement woman said it had come off a luxury transport, unclaimed cargo. She'd had it 3 months. Vracath touched it. "How much?" Kale said. He paid what he had left over from Sten's remaining cash, which was almost nothing, and which was going to make the next few days very thin. The woman folded the dress in packing film and handed it across. Outside, Vracath held the package and didn't say anything. "You said you were finishing the braid even though you wouldn't be there," Kale said. "Yes." "Well, now you've got the dress, whether or not you get to the dance," he shrugged. "The braid and the dress exist. That means something, doesn't it, even without the dance?" She was quiet for a long time. The settlement lights were yellow and ordinary. Somewhere nearby, a pressure seal was venting in small rhythmic bursts. "The third token," she said, "in the braid, the one I told you about. The door you walk past." "Yes," she looked at the package. "It doesn't have a name in standard, but in Orc the word it's the same word we use for a very specific kind of light, the kind that comes through rock. When the rock is thin enough and the light on the other side is strong enough, you can see it glow." She paused. "From inside the rock you wouldn't know the light was there, but something made a crack in the wall and now you can see it." He didn't say anything. He didn't think it needed anything said. Sten found them when they came back. He was standing outside the medic's unit with his arm bandaged, and his eyes at the particular angle that meant he'd been doing math again. He looked at the package under Vracath's arm and said nothing. "What?" Kale said. "Nothing. Sten. It's a good thing you did." He said it roughly, the way Sten said things that cost him something. "It's a good thing. We still have the problem of Gauss." "I know. And the fight." "I know." He put his hands in his pockets. "The fight's still on. Gauss doesn't know what happened at Durex yet. The circuit's running tomorrow. I checked the comms when you were in the terminal. If we get there by morning, we're in the roster. They don't confirm the bracket until the hour before, so there's no way Gauss can pull you without showing his hand to the circuit operators, and he doesn't want that kind of attention." He paused. "If we win the fight, we have money. Money changes the math with Gauss. Always does. It's the only leverage that works with him." Sten looked at Kale with the directness he used when he was being honest, which was less often than it should have been. "I know I put you here. I know what I've cost you, not just the hands, all of it. The years," he exhaled. I can't give that back." "I know you can't." "I'd like to try, after this. Whatever after this looks like. He reached in his jacket and took out the ledger and held it for a second. I'd like to try. Cale looked at his brother. The cracked rib, the bandaged arm, the face with its twice rearranged architecture. The man who had spent 7 years spending Cale's talent like borrowed capital and calling it management. Let me fight first, Cale said. Yeah, Sten said. Let me drive. The harvest circuit ran out of a compound in San Francisco's Chinatown analog. The human settlement had mapped its own ethnic architecture onto the lunar grid, and the Chinatown block had become, over 30 years, as real as its original. Paper lanterns in pressurized street lamps, narrow corridors of vendor stalls, incense drifting through recycled air. And at the center, the circuit hall, which had no sign because it didn't need one. They got there with 20 minutes to spare before the bracket confirmed. The hall was full. Not just with humans. The harvest circuit drew cross-species crowds, and a significant portion of the spectators were Orc, thick-framed and amber-eyed. The men with clan markings across their shoulders. The women with harvest braids that were not like Vrackith's but were of the same tradition. The same practice of hands working fiber while the world moved around them. Vrackith had stopped in the doorway. You don't have to come in, Cale said. I know. She came in. Sten got them registered. Cale went to the preparation room and wrapped his hands with the slow care of someone who knows each finger by name and has had occasion to mourn for all of them. The wrappings were ordinary, standard pressure wrap, the kind any circuit fighter used, but the way he did them was not ordinary. He did them the way he'd been taught by his first trainer, when he was 17 and didn't know yet what he was getting into, the old woman who'd watched him wrap and said, "You do it like you mean to come home." He still did them that way. The room had the specific quiet of places where violence is about to be organized, the sound of breathing, the smell of sweat and activated synthetics. 2 other fighters prepping at the opposite bench, both human, both not his problem tonight. His problem tonight was the Orc champion in bracket 3, a fighter registered as Gruul of the Crested Clan, who had, according to the rumors Sten had collected on the transit, not lost a harvest circuit match in 4 seasons. Sten came in 10 minutes before the match and stood in the doorway. He's 4 inches taller, Sten said. Reach is going to be an issue. Reach is always an issue. I mean, it's going to be more of an issue than usual. He paused. I want to tell you something. You're going to tell me it's okay if I don't get up. Sten was quiet. You've been practicing that line the whole drive. I can tell by your face. You're 34, Sten said. You've been fighting since you were 18, and you've got, he gestured at Cale's hands, the swollen knuckles, the thing they didn't name directly. You don't have to, that's what I want to say, if it gets bad. If it gets to the place where you're on the floor and you don't know which way is up, you don't have to get up. Cale finished tying off the wrap on his right hand. Sten, I mean it. The business plan is it can be adjusted. I can find another. Sten. What? I've been getting up since I was 18. He stood. Let's go. Gruul of the Crested Clan was everything the rumors had described, and a few things they'd politely omitted. He was enormous, not in the way that Orcs were generally larger than humans, but in the specific way of a fighter who has spent years adding mass on top of mass, who has trained the body to become an object. He came out to the circuit floor without ceremony, without showmanship, and looked at Cale with the particular assessment of a fighter who has seen a lot of smaller men think they had a plan. The plan lasted 90 seconds. The hit that put Cale down was clean, a cross that came around the guard, caught him on the side of the head and sat him on the floor with a sound like a door being shut. He was aware of the floor. He was aware that it was cold. He was aware distantly of the crowd, which had the quality of sound that crowds get when something expected has happened. A settling, a satisfaction, a not quite silence. He was aware of his hands. The right one had connected once early, and the knuckles had said what they always said. We're still here, but we're asking you to think about this." He lay on the floor. He thought about it. He thought about Sten in the doorway with the ledger in his jacket, and the cracked rib and the eyes that had done the math and come up short. He thought about 7 years and a dry cleaning operation, and what it felt like to do something ordinary with your hands instead of something violent. He thought about Vrakith and the braid and the third token, the word that didn't translate, the light through rock, the crack in the wall that lets you see it. From the outside, they said later, it looked like he simply didn't accept it. Like the human on the floor ran a calculation of his own and arrived at a different answer than the one the fight had suggested. He put one hand flat on the circuit floor, then the other. He pushed. He was slow about it, not because he was hurt, though he was hurt, but because he was going to do it once and he was going to do it right, and he was not going to fall back down. He got up. The orc crowd went quiet in a specific way. Not silent, there was breath and the shuffle of bodies and the ambient noise of the circuit hall, but the particular sound they'd been making, the satisfied sound, stopped. They watched him. Some of the humans started yelling, but the orcs didn't yell. They watched. Gruel looked at him across the circuit floor. Something moved in his amber-green eyes that hadn't been there before. What happened over the next 9 minutes was not a reversal. It was not a moment of secret power finally revealed. What it was, a man who knew exactly how much he could take and had decided, each time the question was asked, to keep answering it. Kale fought from a place that had no glory in it, no drama, just the pure mechanical stubbornness of a human body that had been told it was finished, and had noted the note and returned it unread. He caught Gruel twice more. The second one landed clean. The third round ended with Gruel on the floor. He didn't get up. The circuit official counted it out in the standard cadence. The hall made the noise that halls make. Sten came through the crowd and grabbed Kale's shoulder and said something into the side of his head that Kale couldn't quite hear but understood anyway. Then Sten said very clearly, "There's a problem." "Of course there is." Goss's people, 3 of them at the south exit. Sten's hand was still on his shoulder. "They've been waiting. Someone on Goss's side must have." He stopped. "I'll go talk to them. I'll tell them we have the money, we'll settle. Just go. Go get your payout from the circuit master and go to the north exit." I know what they'll do." Sten was already pulling away. His face had the look it got when he'd made a decision without doing the math first. "I'll be fine. I know how to talk to Goss's people. Been doing it for 3 years." "Sten." "Go," Sten said. "Take the money, go." He went to Goss's people, and Kale watched him go, and then went to collect the payout. At the north exit, Vrakith was standing with the dress package under her arm and the braid in her other hand, finished now, all 3 tokens in place. She'd been there, Kale realized, when he'd been knocked down. She'd seen the floor, she'd seen him get up. "You could have left," he said. "Yes. While we were in the fight, you had the vehicle, you had the route." "I know." She held up the braid. The third token caught the circuit hall's lights, the shaped piece of resin that meant the door you walk past, the light through rock. "I finished it," she said. "I see that. I wasn't going to leave before I finished it." He looked at her. He looked at the braid and the dress and the tokens and her hands. He said, "There's a harvest dance." She said, "The cycle's almost closed. Then we should move." Behind them, the circuit hall was still loud with the aftermath of the fight. Somewhere in the south exit, Sten was doing what Sten did, talking fast, promising creatively, rearranging the math until it came out to something livable. He would do what was needed. He would probably be fine. He had always been more resilient than the situation warranted, which was possibly his only reliable talent. Kale and Vrakith went through the north exit into the pressurized arcade of the settlement's Chinatown block, where the paper lanterns were lit, and the vendor stalls were open late, and the recycled air tasted faintly of incense, and someone somewhere was playing an instrument that wasn't human and wasn't orc, but was something in between, a sound that didn't belong to either tradition, and so ended up belonging to both. "Where is it?" Kale said. "The dance." "East Sector. There's a meeting ground. It's traditional. Open ground, harvest tokens, the whole ceremony." She paused. "I haven't been back to an orc ceremony in 2 years." "Is that?" "It's terrifying." She said it plainly, without self-pity. "I've been outside too long. The marks don't match the traditions anymore. I don't have a clan to stand with." She touched the braid. "I have this." "And the dress." She looked at the package. "And the dress," she said. The harvest grounds were open to the lunar sky, or rather, to the pressurized dome that stood in for it, the transparent alloy that let through the unfiltered starlight in a way that the settlement strip didn't. Under it, the orc families had arranged themselves in the old pattern, the clan braids lit from below by the harvest torches, which were not fire but were shaped like fire, the same way many things on this moon were shaped like the original, and were not quite the original but were not less real for that. Vrackith put on the dress in the entrance to the grounds. She did it quickly, without ceremony. She wasn't the kind of person who made a production of vulnerability, but when she turned back, the deep water color of the fabric had done something unexpected to her. It was not a transformation. It was not a revelation. It was just a girl wearing a dress going to a dance. The kind of ordinary thing that is not ordinary at all when the person doing it has spent 2 years believing it was not possible for them. She wrapped the braid around her wrist. The orc families nearby looked at her, some of them with the flat assessment of clan-marked members seeing an unmarked stranger, some with something more neutral. One older woman, somewhere in the middle distance, looked at the braid on Vrackith's wrist and tilted her head at the tokens, reading them the way orcs read these things, at a distance, in passing, the way you'd read a face. The woman looked at Kale once. Then she looked back at the grounds and didn't look at them again. And in that not looking, there was something that was not exactly welcome and was not exactly refusal. It was the orc version of a door left slightly open. Kale stood at the edge of the grounds. "You can go in," he said. Vrackith didn't move immediately. She was looking at the torches, the families, the braidwork on display, the harvest tokens that other women had worked and worn and brought here under their own power. "My mother used to say," she said, "that the harvest dance was where you showed what you were made of, what your hands had made, what you'd given and what you'd kept." She paused. She meant it as a form of judgment, a reckoning. "What do you mean it as?" She thought for a moment. "Evidence," she said. "I'm made of this. The braid's done. The dress exists." She looked sideways at him. "You bought it before you knew if you were going to win the fight." "I had some credit left." "You didn't know if you'd have more." He shrugged. The dress was going to exist either way, same as the braid. She was quiet for a second. Then, without a word or a look, she walked into the harvest grounds, and the light of the torches caught the deep water color of the dress, and the braid moved on her wrist, and the third token, the light through rock, the door you walk past, turned once in the manufactured starlight. Kale watched her go. He thought about Sten, somewhere in the circuit hall, talking his way out of something with nothing but nerve and the 7-year-old belief that the numbers would eventually add up. He'd call when it was settled. He always called. He thought about mornings, the ritual of the fist. Some mornings it didn't hurt. He stood at the edge of the harvest grounds and watched the dance go on. The orc families in their traditional arrangements, the braids and the tokens, the things you make with your hands to show what you've been. And among them, eventually, a girl in a deep-water dress who walked like someone who had decided to be present in her own life, with a braid on her wrist that contained one token for work, one for voluntary sacrifice, and one that meant, in a language without a standard translation, the act of staying when you could leave, the crack in the wall that lets the light through. He put his hands in his pockets. On the right hand, The swollen knuckles had gone quiet. Some mornings it didn't hurt. This wasn't a morning. But it was the kind of night that made the mornings seem worth it. He stayed. Sten called 2 hours after the dance ended. Cale was sitting outside the harvest grounds on a packing crate that someone had left against the dome wall, listening to the music still moving inside. He answered on the second ring. "I'm out," Sten said. "Goss's people, I sorted it." "How?" "The way I sort things, talking and math." A pause. "I gave them most of the prize money." "How much is most?" 60%. Cale did the math. What was left was not California. It was not the dry cleaning operation, the legitimate business, the pressed uniforms and ordinary hours. What was left was enough to get off this moon and be somewhere else, and that was genuinely different from nothing. "Okay," he said. "I'm sorry, Cale." "I know. I mean it this time. I know I say it and then." "I know you mean it this time too." He shifted on the crate. Inside the dome, the music had changed tempo, slower now, the kind that happens when the formal ceremony is done and people are just staying because they want to stay. "Listen, you know that shop I found online 3 months ago? The one in the outer settlement ring on Havel 7. Sten was quiet. "The place with the unit space." "Commercial unit, ground floor, next to the transit hub. 2 rooms and a pressurized service yard. Rent's low because the hull insulation needs replacing." "I remember." "The insulation we can fix ourselves. You know how to run a seam welder." "Cale." "I'm just saying, we don't need California money, we need Havel 7 money, and that's different math." A long pause. He could hear Sten doing it, the recalculation, the numbers shuffled into a new arrangement. He heard the moment it came up clean. "Yeah," Sten said, quiet. "Yeah, okay. Get yourself back to the north exit. We'll figure out the transit." He hung up. He sat for another minute listening to the music through the dome wall. The harvest dance was winding down. Through the transparent alloy above, the stars were as clear as they'd been all night, the unfiltered kind. No atmosphere between him and them. The light coming from very far away and arriving exactly as it left. Old and cold and genuinely indifferent, which was oddly comforting if you thought about it in the right way. Vracketh came out eventually. She still had the dress on. The braid was on her wrist, the 3 tokens in place. She sat down on the packing crate beside him without asking if there was room. "How was it?" Cale said. She thought about it. "Loud," she said, "and strange," and she looked at the tokens. Some of the older women, they looked at the braid, they could read it. She paused. They didn't say anything. But they looked. Good looked or bad looked. Just looked. Like they were seeing something they recognized from a long time ago. Like they were remembering what it was to make one of these without a clan standing behind you. She turned the braid on her wrist. "Like I wasn't entirely invisible." He nodded. "What happens now?" she said. "Sten's on his way back. We've got some money, not as much as we wanted." He looked at the stars. "There's a commercial unit on Havel 7. Hull insulation needs work, but the space is right. The dry cleaning operation. Smaller, more realistic." He paused. "We could use someone who knows how to handle pressurized garment textiles." She looked at him. "Orc-made fiber work," he said. "There's no one in the outer settlements who does certified restoration on traditional braids and ceremonial textiles. Nobody's even thought to offer it. But there's a market, people coming off the contested zones, clan members trying to preserve things." He stopped himself. "I'm doing Sten's thing." "You are? Is it a terrible idea?" She was quiet for a while. The music inside the dome had gone very slow, almost a hum now. The torches were dimming on the automated cycle, the harvest ceremony following its ancient timing even on a pressurized moon, 100 years removed from any planet that had ever held a harvest. "I have nowhere to go," she said, not sadly, practically. The way she said most things. Durex gone, my family, a pause. My family's door is locked and I made my peace with that. The outer settlements are the only place that was ever mine, and mine is a strong word for a room I was renting. So she looked at the braid one more time. Yes, she said, on one condition. What? We name it something better than dry cleaning. He almost laughed. It came out as something quieter, the small exhalation of a man who hasn't had much to laugh about and is slightly rusty at it. Deal, he said. Sten arrived 20 minutes later, walking slightly lopsided because of the rib, with his jacket sleeve still bloody and his eyes at the angle of a man who has been through something and has decided the math works out. He looked at Vrakith. He looked at the dress. He looked at Kale. She coming with us? He said. Yes, Kale said. Okay. He reached into his jacket and took out the ledger. He turned to a blank page at the back. There were 3 blank pages, because Sten had always believed in leaving room and uncapped his pen. New column, he said. Vrakith watched him begin to write. Her hands found the braid on her wrist. Her thumbs moved through the tokens one at a time: work, sacrifice, staying, the familiar motion, the thing her hands knew how to do when the world was uncertain. The stars were still up there, cold and clear. The insulation on Havel 7 was fixable. Some mornings it didn't hurt. They walked toward the transit hub together. 3 people who had arrived at the end of something and found it looked less like an ending than they'd expected. The kind of thing that happens when you decide not to stay on the floor. Not because the floor isn't real or the pain isn't real, but because you haven't finished what you came here to do, and you aren't going to let the floor make that decision for you. Behind them, the last torches of the harvest ceremony went down one by one, the ancient cycle closing, the way it always closed, not with announcement, not with ceremony, just with the slow and ordinary diminishment of light, until only the stars were left, and the stars had always been enough.